actual location of the tower, and then the tower actually sends the call to the 911 center, which is here. We then, from the 911 system, will be able to tell whether it's a phase 1 or a phase 2 call. Phase 1 meaning we know the tower that it hit, we don't have the location. Phase 2 means we've actually captured the GPS from the phone, and it'll actually give us the location of the caller from the GPS. Through the mapping system from the county called AccuGlobe, we can actually trace the location of where the cell caller is.
Would that work if there was an ice fisherman? I saw the other day in the paper that the Coast Guard was able to find some ice fishermen by their GPS.
Actually, they got the GPS reading from us.
That's how they do that.
Yes.
To you. Okay, that's what I wondered.
It'll come up on our 911 screen with the Latin long of where the call's coming from, and we in turn turn it over to the Coast Guard. That's happened several times on the lake. Just this past summer, we had a vessel that actually sank. The guy, however he did it, I'm not sure, but he was able to keep his phone dry, and we actually were pinging the GPS on his phone. The vessel sank quite a distance from where the family was actually located.
Wow.
Now, do you know how is this a unique program for Ottawa County? Do all counties have this, or is this
not all counties? No, we were probably one of the first in the county in the state to actually do phase 2 911.
One of the first in the 88 counties?
Well, probably within the first. I'm guessing the first maybe 25.
Why do you think that is? What was different about this county that you were able to secure that?
Well, the commissioners were on board with moving forward on this. I think Mr. Koebel was on the board at that time.
And I think
very instrumental in moving this forward.
Okay.
And I think part of it plays in is Ottawa County is unique because of Davis-Besse. We do many things in disaster planning and disaster training and emergency services because of Davis-Besse that other counties don't do.
Sure.
So, and we didn't even get downstairs in the basement, the EMA, where you would see how that setup is. And I think that's one of the reasons that it's been beneficial for the Sheriff's Department. We understand the need for those security issues, maybe a little bit more than some counties, and have a need for it maybe a little bit more than some counties because of Davis-Besse.
Yeah, makes sense.
And they've been very good at helping with some of the funding on some of these
Yes,
issues.
they have.
Been very good.
So once the calls come in here and you dispatch it out to the officers, and again, is that all through computers? And I mean, we're staying in your office here because we don't want to talk too loud and get in the way of the calls that might be coming in.
We have a CAD system, computer-aided dispatch, that any call that we take goes into the CAD system, and it tells us basically what agency the call is in. CAD actually shows us what officers are on duty at the time, and then it'll automatically assign the officers or the fire departments to the respective areas.
Got it. How many calls do you think you get in a day? Or do you chart it by day, by month?
It varies.
Season?
Yeah, I mean, it varies. Now, we probably take a dozen a day, but in the summertime, that just quadruples. We take several. Right now, the statistics I did for January, I think the sheriff's office took around 700 or 800 911 calls for the month.
Yeah. And how do you determine which of these calls you have to act on and others are? I mean, you know, you're always hearing how people make these calls for, you know, my car, or my kid took my car, or, you know, I think my husband took my car somewhere. Can you find him? You know, I hear these stories of, you know, knuckleheads in the news, I think, on some of the stations are called. How do you decipher, and how do you get people to stop making those calls?
Well, to stop making the calls is kind of difficult. I mean, through training, we're able to decide, you know, what is priority and what's not. The priority calls obviously are dispatched right away. There's a lot of times we can maybe handle a situation over the phone. A lot of times they just want some clarification on some things. We do not give any legal advice over the phone, but we can give them some direction on how to handle things.
And how many people do you usually have on duty at a time, or does that also
No,
matter?
we always have two. We never go under two. Sometimes there's three on duty up there.
Can you give us kind of an example of course you can't train us on how they do this, but give us an example of what they need to know in order to be able to be a dispatch officer.
Well, there's a lot of on-the-job training. I mean, In fact, we just hired a guy he just started this week. We go through a pretty intense interview process, and then, I mean, there's no special certification that you have to get in here, but once you are on board, we have a 8 to 12 week in-house training program that we do, and then all dispatchers are emergency medical dispatch certified. Actually, one of the dispatchers is an on-staff trainer. It's a 40-hour course that we take, and we can actually give instructions over the phone, emergency medical instructions such as CPR, bleeding control, breathing control, things like that. And then there's a 40-hour telecommunicator course that we take. It's all through APCO, a state certified certification that all the dispatchers also have. And then there's the law enforcement automated data system, which is another training session for that. Davis Bessie we train in yearly through emergency management in the county. So there's a lot of training that we do, and then that's what I'm working on right now is we have to show 24 hours of continuing education to keep our emergency medical dispatch training up. And again, that's what I'm working on now, and that's who the lady was I talked to that called earlier. I need to keep the staff current on their certification for that.
Got it.
So
Just from being up here, it seemed to me it would have to, when you said you have an intensive interviewing process, it seemed to me you'd have to have somebody that is really, really good at talking to people and keeping their cool. Because I've been up here when calls have come in, and it's so neat to see the way they can calm that person down and get the information they need instantly. I mean, it's not like it takes them forever. It would take me forever to get it done. They just do it in seconds, and they're so impressed with it.
Yeah.
So it is a lot of internal training. But for somebody that would think about, gee, someday I'd like to be a dispatcher, going into some kind of a computer program, or is there any kind of training that you have?
Obviously, computer skills are mandatory now, because everything we do up there is computer. When I started here 21 years ago, and everything was on a piece of paper and pen. I mean, we didn't even have a computer up here to enter calls, and everything was done by paper complaint reports. I mean, there was no computers. Everything is computer now. One of the courses that we do in house, the 40-hour APCO dispatch telecommunicator course, it's called. If someone was looking at that course would obviously be helpful, because that gives a lot of the grassroots training in dispatch as far as how to answer the phone, what kind of information to take. Like Carl said, how to calm down callers and things like that.
What do you think's been the biggest difference since you had to certainly retrain to be able to use computers, which must have been pretty challenging, and I mean that changes every day. What else has been really different since 21 years ago? What's been exciting and challenging?
I say the cellular 911 calls. To me, that has been one of the best things that's happened.
Really?
Because before we actually had any phase of 911 for cellular calls, the cellular 911 calls would come in on our business line on 4404. So when we answer the business line, I mean, they're normally not an emergency call. But prior to the implementation of phase 1 and 2 911, a lot of times we'd answer the business line, and it was somebody screaming for help from a car accident on Route 2.
Jeez.
And they'd say, and we try to get a location, in literally I've had calls where people said, I'm somewhere between Toledo and Cleveland. And then we, at that point, have to start narrowing down. We don't know if it could be in Danbury, it could be near Oak Harbor, it could be clear up by 579. We had no idea.
Right.
At least with phase 1, we know the area that they're in. Phase 2 puts us right where we need to be. We had an incident just the other day where a lady was approached and her window was broken out. She had no idea where she was at. I was able to find her just from the map. I knew exactly where she was at. I was able to send an officer before she could even tell me where she was at.
She was probably full of fear and couldn't
She
think
was.
straight.
She absolutely was.
How many years have we been in here?
Up here, it's been longer than I've been here. 911 was implemented in 1988, and I came here in 90. They started downstairs for a short time.
I thought it was downstairs.
When I got up here in 90, it was already up here.
What do you